Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is all the reportage and all the rumors about the Israeli-Saudi deal in the works. Speaking metaphorically, a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia would be the jewel in the crown for the Abraham Accords. Everyone involved. Speaking practically and tactically, a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia would effectively be a ginormous step towards the ending of the Israel-Arab conflict. There are rumors and there are press reports and there are statements from interested partners scattered near and far. And the New York Times' Thomas Friedman is once again out in front explaining what he thinks will happen. Following a sit-down with U.S. President Biden, Friedman wrote up his impressions and prognostications. They come with a caveat. Friedman has a long and trusted relationship with U.S. President Joe Biden. Friedman is probably one of Biden's closest unofficial advisors on foreign policy. And Friedman's column in the New York Times following that meeting, a column in which he shares his reservations and many potential pitfalls to be navigated, lays out a very complicated path to Saudi-Israeli deal. Now, according to Friedman, Thomas Friedman, and remember, he is one of Biden's besties, and the biggest obstacle to the Saudi-Israeli deal seems to him that Biden is not yet committed to the Saudi-Israeli deal. That's important. Friedman describes the potential deal, the deal almost in the making, as a quadrilateral deal. A deal between the United States, 1, Saudi Arabia, 2, Israel, 3, and the Palestinians, 4. And that's just one of the problems in the deal as described, as envisioned, and as dissected by Thomas Friedman. And it is the only glimpse we have into the thinking of the President of the United States on this question, who on this issue has remained somewhat tight-lipped. He has, however, hinted that the deal is in the works. There are so many other problems with the plan. For example, the King of Saudi Arabia, King Salman, is virtually retired at the age of 87. The king has repeatedly and publicly said that there will be no deal with Israel until the Palestinian issue is resolved. Salman is now out of the public eye. He has handed over operational control of the kingdom to his son, Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Practically, the only public sentiment expressed by the king since the Abraham Accords were announced back in August 2020 is this: no deal with Israel until the Palestinian issue is resolved. In other words, the Palestinian issue and all that it implies is very important to King Salman of Saudi Arabia. But the Saudi monarch is old school. That sentiment runs counter to new conventional wisdom, which is that of the Arab Muslim leadership, including the now ruling son of King Salman, namely Prince Mohammed bin Salman. They have lost their patience with the Palestinians. And that is at the core of why the Palestinians were, and still are, against the Abraham Accords. Prior to the Abraham Accords, the Palestinian issue placed them and their conflict dead center in everything in the Middle East. The Abraham Accords proved that there is a seismic shift in attitudes. The Abraham Accords proved that Arab leaders were willing to view relations with Israel in a more nuanced and stratified manner. The Abraham Accords proved that these leaders could separate the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. They could separate the Palestinian issue from their own needs and wants and hopes, and work together with Israel, the Jewish state, on issues of mutual benefit, issues that were easily within their reach, and hence the Accords were successful. Meanwhile, the United States has needs of their own. The United States needs Saudis to inject money, quite a lot of money, into the Palestinian infrastructure to help them build a state. More importantly, the United States needs the Saudis to slow or even stop their overtures towards China. And most importantly, the United States needs Saudi Arabia to sign an agreement with Israel. This is where Friedman's insight into Biden's lack of commitment is important. Biden-Friedman know that a Saudi deal with Israel signed by Netanyahu is a gargantuan prize, a prize that would secure Netanyahu a position of splendor in the history books, not a position tarnished by corruption and trials. Biden-Friedman know that when push comes to shove, Benjamin Netanyahu is a politician, not an ideologue. They know that his most important goal is personal. It is to stay in power. They reason that Netanyahu will compromise on issues relating to the Palestinian statehood, but his coalition partners to his right will not compromise, and his government will fall. The Biden-Friedmans are hoping that the moderates in the opposition will jump forward to save Netanyahu and his government in the name of peace with Saudi Arabia. They perceive that the Saudi deal is that important. But that is a huge mistake. Biden-Friedman wrongly think that the opposition to Netanyahu is centered on his corruption trials. That is so very wrong. That is only a tiny sliver of a much larger issue of their anyone but Bibi stance. Biden-Friedman do not realize how deep the antipathy within Israeli opposition is for Bibi Netanyahu as a person and as a leader. Almost all the heads of the major parties in the opposition were one-time protégés of Netanyahu. They do not realize that if they had someone else in power, in the leader as the Likud leader, the governing coalition right now would be at least 80 members strong. The only parties outside the coalition would be the Arab parties and the marginal parties on the edges of the political spectrum in Israel. One of my jobs is to predict what will happen in the future. I do that by assessing situations, by applying historical data, by looking at what is transpiring in public and what is probably happening behind closed doors. There is no doubt that Israel would like a deal with Saudi Arabia, any deal with Saudi Arabia. But the coalition partners will not permit compromise, and deals require compromise. I do not see a Saudi-Israeli deal in the near future. I do see tiny, tiny steps, secret exchanges of defense and intelligence information. I see secret technical and medical exchanges of information and technology. All these may lead to a deal down the road, but not now. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from the New York Post that was written by John Bolton, Ambassador John Bolton. On July 30th, 2023, Bolton's column is entitled, "Biden Hurt America and Israel in Bashing Bibi's Judicial Reforms." This is how Bolton, a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, begins. For both America and Israel, President Joe Biden was wrong to intervene in the contentious debate over Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu's proposed judicial reforms. Biden's spokeswoman criticized Netanyahu, saying it was unfortunate he pushed change through Israel's Knesset with the slimmest possible majority. Biden was mistaken for several reasons. First, his opinions will have no effect inside Israel, except perhaps hardening already deeply divided viewpoints even further, thereby impeding formation of the consensus he says he wants. This is nothing but virtue signaling, aimed more at Biden's own domestic constituency than anything else. And if he had bothered to consider American history, he would know that many historically significant U.S. statutes passed with narrow majorities. As the column continues, Bolton explains that it really isn't by the slimmest margins, but by a significant one at that. He continues, second, facts matter. Not to be picky, but the Knesset vote was not the slimmest possible majority. Netanyahu's government has 64 seats of 120, so 61 votes is the thinnest majority, assuming all members vote. Given Israel's incredibly divided electorate, reflected in the multiple recent elections and 64-vote majority is quite comfortable. Government must go on. Bolton continues with a third issue. Third, he writes, if Biden truly were interested in security of Israel's democracy, he should have critiqued the tactics of the reform opponents. And now Bolton puts Netanyahu's reforms into perspective, and he writes the following. The real problem, another target of Netanyahu's reforms, is the self-perpetuating nature of Israel's Supreme Court. How would Biden's U.S. supporters feel if, starting immediately, the Supreme Court picked its own successors? That would be undemocratic, as Israel's judicial selection process is. In conclusion, John Bolton writes the final elements in terms of explaining exactly what the issues are. He writes, besides, Israel does have a constitution, an unwritten one, much like the United Kingdom. Today, written constitutions around the world contain flowery language about citizens' rights that mean absolutely nothing. A written constitution would not inevitably be a panacea for Israeli divisions. Clearly, the role of Israel's judiciary in its vibrant democracy is contentious. U.S. officials who are real friends of Israel should contribute their thoughts quietly behind the scenes. Otherwise, Israeli officials may start commenting publicly on Hunter Biden's plea deal. I find this to be a very important and interesting perspective of John Bolton. Thank you very much. Next up is a column that was written by Bob Greene for the Wall Street Journal. This column was published on July 27, 2023. It's entitled, Heavy Reading at Books by the Pound, subtitled, At a store in Secre, Arkansas, volumes are measured by weight. Every once in a while I enjoy pointing out a column because it's tangentially connected to our discussion. This is a perfect example of it. The column is about books. For me, books are very important. And I found this column intriguing, and I hope you do too. Greene begins. Summer reading season is at its peak, and a buddy who lives in central Arkansas was telling me about the books he plans to enjoy while the sun is high in the sky. It wasn't the titles of his selections that intrigued me, though. It was the place where he said he was purchased them, a store called Books by the Pound. I thought he was kidding, but in the town of Secre, Arkansas, population 23,000, a standalone store is doing something that might jolt the traditions of the genteel literary world. As Americans can feel the pinch of inflation and reconsider their spending habits, Books by the Pound sells used books the way a grocery sells ground beef or deli sells chicken salad. Instead of give me 1.5 pounds of pastrami, or I'll take 2 pounds of coleslaw though, it's give me 3 pounds of William Faulkner and a couple pounds of Mary Higgins Clark. My business background is in recycling, not books, said Richard Howell, the store's co-owner. He explained that millions of books each year go unsold in retail outlets or are tossed out by their owners and end up in garbage cans or crushed into pulp. Secondhand shops and online merchants have become the final home for many of them. Greene explains the business model of the store in Secre that sells its wares by the pound and by the box also. The box is important too. $1.50 a pound or $30 a box. If you ask me, this is a really great deal, he continues. In Church Street, he and his co-owners have made a bet on a different business model. The price on the cover of a book is irrelevant at Books by the Pound. The only way a customer can purchase books is by weighing them on the scales by the cash registers. It's $1.50 a pound, Mr. Howell said. The best deal for customers is the empty boxes we provide, which can hold 40 or more pounds of books, and it's $30 for a box of books, flat fee. If you can get at least 40 books into those boxes, there are around 100,000 books always in stock. And each week, an additional truck full of used books pulls up, and the store's loading dock. Inside the store's shelves, our bins are divided into categories: religion, fiction, history, romance, sci-fi, biography, westerns, and many more. But some customers just ask for a random box of books with mixed categories. For $30, they figure it's like a treasure hunt. There's bound to be something in the box they'll enjoy. Greene explains that for now, this bookstore in Secre is the first store of its kind, and it's working. This is how he concludes. People love to read, but money can be tight these days, Mr. Howell said. Selling literature by the pound means that a slim novel by a Nobel laureate will be less expensive than a 400-page guide to refrigerator and air conditioning repair. But he feels there is nothing undignified about the store's business model. The important thing, after all, is that books end up being read. The store in Sikri is currently a one-off, but the owners are talking about expanding to other towns where readers might like to take home 6 or 7 pounds of leisure reading. It sounds like a simple concept, said Mr. Howell, but sometimes those are the best. As I said, I love this column, and I love the concept, as long as it gets people reading books again. Thank you, Bob Greene, for introducing me, and now you, to an idea that is new and different about books. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 6 cartoons, memes, and headlines today. Last week, I spoke a little bit about emojis, if you remember. Here's a great pun on hieroglyphics and emojis. The caption reads, 4,000 years later, and we're back to the same language. This is so true. Sometimes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Next up is a poke at the add-on costs of flying that airlines often hide and don't tell you about. 2 travelers are looking at the information board in the airport, and we see posted at airports all these things all the time. The board reads, first check bag, $15. Restroom, $10. Pillow, $5. Tiny bag of pretzels, $7. Oxygen mask, $20. Then the man traveling with his wife turns and mutters, this is an ugly trend. And I say it could turn out to be very expensive also. Next up is a picture and a headline from the UK newspaper, The Telegraph. We see a picture of a brand new electric truck, and the headline reads, Labour Council using diesel generators to charge electric bin lorries. Lorries, for those of you who don't know, are trucks in British terminology. Subtitled, Cardiff Council resorts to using portable diesel generators because of software problem causing new system to trip. It might be true, but this is hilarious. Imagine using generators to charge electric trucks. Wow. This next piece is a headline, Dead Man Ain't Me. A man named Charles Kivel walked into a morgue in Galilee, Rhode Island, walked into the morgue itself and looked at the body which had been identified as his. He said, nope, he said, that ain't me, and he walked out again. Next up is a Twitter communication, a back and forth. Someone asked, why do so many murderers bury victims in their own backyards? Someone else answers, not everyone has the trunk space or the gas money to drive way out in the middle of nowhere to dump their bodies. Check your privilege. We're all doing the best we can out here. That's funny. Check your privilege. Finally, for fans of great music and those frustrated by the horrific noise some call music, we see a red emergency alarm box with a glass window and a little mallet. Inside the box is a disc of music by Miles Davis, and the caption reads, in case of bad music. In other words, in case of bad music, break the glass, take out the disc, and listen to Miles Davis. Just brilliant. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Inbar Lanier, the world judo champion for women up to 78 kilo, won the gold medal at the Hungarian Masters 2023 Championship in Budapest. Fellow Israeli judoka Peter Palchik won the silver medal at the tournament in the men's up to 100 kilo category after losing to in the final to his Uzbeki rival. Good going, Israel, which continues to excel in judo worldwide. Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer, a former ambassador to the United States, expressed critique for the Biden White House. In an interview with Fox News, Dermer said that the judicial overhaul is, quote, an internal matter in Israel, and it is something that other democratic leaders should not interfere with, end quote. According to Dermer, and I'm quoting again, the Prime Minister is acting according to the policy he established as Prime Minister. And I will encourage all leaders around the world to respect the decisions of other democratic countries. An Israeli tourist filed a complaint with local police in Berlin, the capital of Germany, claiming that he was attacked after speaking Hebrew on the streets of Berlin. In a statement released by Israel's Foreign Ministry, quote, "The issue is known and is being handled by the Israeli embassy in Germany. We are in contact with the citizen and are awaiting the results of the investigation by German police." That is truly frightening. Just speaking Hebrew can get you attacked in, of all places, Germany. Israel's political security cabinet was convened in response to a shooting attack in Tel Aviv that took place after a Palestinian was killed by settlers in an incident in Burqa. All this as tensions with Hezbollah on the northern border continue to build. The cabinet meeting, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was originally supposed to vote on concessions for the Palestinians, a move they considered under pressure from the United States, which is trying to shore up the Palestinian Authority. Relevant military officials were informed that, while their discussion about the Palestinians is on the agenda, after a terror attack in downtown Tel Aviv, concessions that were supposed to be voted on would instead come up for another discussion at some later time, not immediately after a terror attack. In a statement posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, the Embassy of Saudi Arabia in Lebanon called on its citizens to quickly leave Lebanese territory and avoid approaching areas of armed conflict. The Foreign Ministry of Bahrain has also called on its citizens to leave Lebanon because of the armed conflict. Things are heating up in the region. Iranian news agencies reported that Iran has equipped its Revolutionary Guards Navy with drones and the 100-kilo or 600-mile range missiles. Meanwhile, the U.S. is offering to put security guards on commercial ships going through the Gulf's Straits of Hormuz. According to IRNA, which is one of the official news agencies of the state of Iran, quote, various types of drones and several hundred cruise and ballistic missiles with a range of 300 to 1,000 kilometers are among the systems and equipment that we are added to the capabilities of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Navy. Kuwait announced that Iran's foreign minister has invited his Kuwaiti counterpart to Tehran. It will not be a friendly meeting. Tensions are simmering over the offshore Dura gas field. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait claim exclusive rights, joint rights, to the field, while Iran also claims a stake in the gas field. Iranian leadership is claiming that the Saudi-Kuwaiti agreement to develop the field last year is illegal. I expect that tensions on this issue will continue to rise. A Russian government-linked hacking group took aim at dozens of global organizations with a campaign to steal login credentials by engaging users in Microsoft Teams chats, pretending to be from their technical support units. This information was announced by Microsoft researchers and security experts. Microsoft explains that these highly targeted social engineering attacks have affected fewer than 40 unique global organizations since late May. By way of a blog, Microsoft researchers added that the company was investigating the breach. The Russian embassy in Washington did not immediately respond to a request for comment. And according to Microsoft researchers, the plan worked this way. Hackers set up domains and accounts that looked like technical support and tried to engage teams and users in chats and get them to approve multi-factor authentication, that's MFA, and the prompts, according to a statement released by Microsoft. And this is what they said. Microsoft has mitigated the actor from using the domains and continues to investigate this activity and work to remediate the impact of the attack. Clashes continued in the Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon. The clashes are between members of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas Fatah group and Islamic factions. A Lebanese army spokesman said that the death toll from the fighting in the Ain al-Hilwa camp have reached 6 dead already, although some reports have even higher numbers of deaths, and I would agree with the larger numbers. According to Adnan Rifai, a member of the popular committee that serves as the governing body in the camp, despite attempts by Lebanese parties and some of the Palestinian factions to broker a ceasefire, and I'm quoting here, "The shooting and shelling have not stopped in the camp until this moment," end quote. The clashes erupted after the Islamic militants shot and killed a Palestinian military general from the Fatah group named Abu Ashraf al-Armoushi. Also killed were 3 of his bodyguards. Once again, 2 men set the Quran alight outside the parliament in Stockholm. This is according to the AFP reporter, who was an eyewitness to the Quran burning. Compared this latest protest to similar protests that have sparked tensions between Sweden and Middle East countries. Salwan Mamika and Salwan Nejm kicked and stomped on the Muslim holy book. They set its pages on fire before slamming it shut, just as they had done at a protest outside Stockholm's main mosques in late June, sparking outrage and condemnation across the Middle East. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Earlier we spoke about books. Books by the pound, if you remember. Books are central to Jews. Books are essential to the Jewish world. In English, like in every European language, the word book derives from, like in Old English, book, B-U-K, book. That's why it's spelled B-O-O-K. Books were originally carved into stone on planks. Over time, the stone planks were replaced by wood planks. Eventually, the wood plank was replaced by skin or sheets of papyrus that people could write and scribble on. In Hebrew, the word for book is sefer. Sefer, however, does not describe the object. Rather, it describes the story we read inside. The root sefer derives from the word to tell a story. The same root also means, by the way, to count. So a book actually tells the story in a finite amount of space. Another word for book in Hebrew is Megillah, or scroll. English uses the word scroll in exactly the same way that Hebrew uses it. A scroll, like a Megillah, describes the rolled up document that contains the story or other content that is inscribed on the document itself. The Torah is a scroll. It contains the 5 books of Moses. Books of Moses. The Torah, as we read it in synagogues, is indeed a scroll, not just a book. The word Bible derives from the Greek and means book. Libraries across the world, in terms of languages, are called bibliothèques. Bible means book. Bible is a book of books, and hence called the Bible. In Greek, the term for the collection of holy books was shortened, and the term was actually ta biblia ta hagia, meaning the holy books. In Latin, biblia sacra, meaning the holy books, and it was simply truncated to be biblia, Bible. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.